Late on a July afternoon, 3 engines and a 20-person hand crew had paused burning off of a 2-track road. They had established a safe zone and a buffer between themselves and the approaching fire. But the sky started to get dark, and many started to feel uneasy.
Throughout the day, Air Attack had communicated at regular intervals that storm clouds were approaching the area, but smoke and haze made it difficult for ground resources to see the threatening clouds.
The next sequence of events is unclear because they happened in a matter of seconds. Air Attack declared over air-to-ground that the wind had increased dramatically and had shifted to a more northerly direction. "Bad wind! Moving stuff!" was shouted over the radio. Resources were called off the line, but there wasn't even enough time for people to take 2 or 3 steps before an intense gust of wind hit.
Some called it 60 miles per hour, others described ponderosas bent over like whip antennas, and everybody noted how the sky transitioned from black to orange.
Air Attack watched a stand of trees ignite and fire behavior rapidly increase in the vicinity of the cruise. It was like the ignition of a propane barbecue after many unsuccessful attempts with the igniter.
Resources slightly to the south described looking in the direction of the other resources and seeing a 100 to 200 foot tall wave of fire coming over the 2-track and a giant fireball.
Total chaos ensued as overwhelming convective heat blasted through a 70-yard wide area where the resources stood. Firefighters were thrown to the ground and attempted to curl up to protect themselves.
A firefighter dropped his pack and began to run.
It wasn't my primary escape route. It wasn't my secondary. It was an emergency escape route. I was running for my life, and I thought I was going to die. Another firefighter had the briefest moment to think about deploying their shelter.
But things happened so fast, they barely had time to pick up a fallen firefighter while being chased off the ridge by a hanging wall of flames.
The engines began to move down the 2-track. The doors were opening and closing as firefighters played musical chairs and attempted to get into any vehicle they could.
After one crew member got in an engine, then got out and into another engine, then got back in the first engine, the driver finally locked the firefighter in the vehicle and headed out.
The line of engines proceeded but had to stop 3 times to extinguish the gear that had ignited on top of one of the engines. The incident commander trainee, who was viewing the scene from a knob to the south,
heard screaming and absolute chaos on the radio and called for radio silence.
After the first of at least 6 accountability checks, all personnel were miraculously accounted for, but several were badly burned. All resources were ordered to pull out and head to a nearby school for triage and medical care.
Once at the school, the crews prepared an enclosed UTV trailer and the back of a truck for triage and medical care. They compiled medical equipment from 5 different trauma kits, but this would prove to be insufficient for the 5 injured patients.
The patients kept coming, and they occupied all 4 corners of the trailer.
Every square inch of the trailer was covered with cut Nomex, medical equipment, and gauze wrappers.
The incident within an incident commander provided reports to dispatch. For efficiency's sake, he provided 1 complete medical incident report and numbered the patients 1 through 5 as he relayed their status to dispatch. Ground ambulances eventually arrived and departed for the local clinic.
All resources pulled off the fire for the night. Many headed back to the local station, which is adjacent to the airport. Firefighters recalled how surreal it felt to listen to air ambulances arrive and take their fellow firefighters to the regional burn center. One firefighter reflected,
"Everybody on this district was burned that night."